What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I'm also a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And as always, we love bringing new friends on the Dr. Vibe show. But this is a new friend with a twist, because I think in all my years of doing the Dr. Vibe show, and it's been over 10 years and over 2,000 epic conversations. By the way, this is the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of epic conversations. I've said to this new friend, you're going to say your bio, because the bio he gave me, like, it's long, but it's long with a purpose. This young man has done so much, but you know what? I'm going to cheat on him. I'm going to give some of his background, and he's going to fill some stuff in. Our new friend is Emille Bryant. He is the author of Start with a Sparkle and the innovator of Brazen Creativity. I like that. Brazen Creativity. Not brazen as in steak, but brazen as in bold. As an author and innovator, he tirelessly seeks ways to share his insight into leadership, motivation, self-development, and creativity. He is a passionate advocate of independent thinking and believes America's edge in business, conflict resolution, military engagement, and humanitarian. I can't say it right. Humanitarian. Got it.
It's humanitarian. That's it.
I got it. Is in its ability to draw on multiple perspectives and points of view at will. And he just went dark, but he's in the light now. His engagement requires a level of depth, thinking, and willingness to confront personal and collective fears that unlock the power of an individual organization. He has had quite the journey. Everything from Air Force to in different countries, in different states in the United States. He's also had a time in the corporate world. He jumped away from that. And funny thing is, he's in Toronto, but he doesn't live in Toronto, but he's come to love Toronto. So all that wrapped in, saying that we're very blessed and highly favored to have him on the Dr. Vibe show for the first time. And it won't be the last time, because we've had a number of conversations. He's not going to be a one and done. Sorry. He's going to be here for a while. So I'd like to welcome to the Dr. Vibe show for the first time, and again, not the last time, Emille M. Bryant. How are you?
Hey, Dr. Vibe. I am well. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. You've provided a platform for people to sort of think and create and ideate, and I think that this platform is absolutely fabulous. I looked at your bio too, and one of the things that I enjoyed about reading about you is that you just did it. You didn't really care. You was like, expertise is not welcome here. I'm going to just go forth and conquer. And now look at your award-winning show, right? You are heard more in America than in your own home country. And on top of that, man, you have provided a platform for people like myself who maybe don't fit into the mainstream zeitgeist, but who absolutely need to be heard, because we are offering something that the world is desperately looking for: authenticity, creativity, innovation, and a sense of groundedness in all of that nonsense that people are swimming and throwing at us, and they're calling that good. And I'm like, you know what? I know what's good. And it's not because I'm smarter than everyone else. It's because I've lived through it, right? That's what my bio is all about, is me living through a lot of stuff. You know, I've been twice divorced, and I'm not married right now because I have lived through it. And one of the things I can tell you is that living life has so much more to it when you just do it. When you just live it, when you don't have the steps, you don't have the rules, the reasons, the shortcuts. And one of the things that you probably read in my bio that you so eloquently shared is, my job is to be in the middle of that moment, wherever it is. I lived in Japan, I lived in Portugal, I lived in Alabama, Alabama, North Carolina, Texas, and I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. So my life has taught me about being in the moment wherever I am. I couldn't change anything about my life and say, oh, it would have been better if, because everything that I have to offer today comes out of me being in the moment then. wherever I was. And now that I'm in the moment with you, I'm exceptionally excited for the opportunity to have this chat with you, with the people who are tuning in today and who will over time as they take a look at the archives. And my goal is to get them excited about their contribution to their own life the way I had to become excited about my contribution to my own.
Fantastic. And thank you for the praise on what I done. And I am one of those people. I said, you know what? Sometimes you just have to jump off a cliff and grow your wings on the way down. And people ask me, I'm humbled these days. People ask me, how have you got to where you have? And I said, I just started. That's it. I just started, and as I say to people, when the dream is big, the facts don't matter. Right? So I just do it. And you know what? And I tell people too, the reason I'm still here is I make more mistakes, but I don't quit.
Right.
So, I don't
Right.
quit. So I want to dig a little bit into your background, and you shared some of it. Life growing up, especially when we have new friends for the first time on the Dr. I Show, we want the audience to know a little bit more than their beautiful bio, which you have a beautiful one. But life growing up, where did you grow up? Family, education. Can you share some of that of your younger days?
Absolutely. So I grew up the son of two parents who met in Portland, Oregon. What's really interesting is, for those of you who are less familiar about the U.S., my hometown, Portland, Oregon, and the other hometown that I lived in before I joined the military, Seattle, Washington, are not particularly highly black, right? They're 4%, 5% black in those cities. Portland, Oregon is still considered the whitest city in America today in 2018. It just does not have a large population. So, my parents met there. My mother was born in Portland, so I'm truly a Northwest native in that I was born there. My mother was born there. My father was born in Mississippi, and when he was 9 years old, he moved to Portland. And both sets of grandparents moved to Oregon because they sought a better life than what they found in Mississippi and Alabama. Now, having lived in Alabama in the 90s, I can only imagine what it was like for my grandparents who left there in the 40s and my father's parents in the 50s from Mississippi. And what I learned from my experience was that their desire for a good life trumped any fear they would have had. And that translated to my parents and to me, right? So my father's an artist. And he was a very vibrant part of my life, although my parents were divorced by the time I was 2 years old. And in his vibrance, one of the things he taught me was that creativity is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. And I didn't understand that until I became an adult myself, and especially as a father. And I'll share with that a little with you on that soon. But the other thing that my mother taught me was that compassion and love are the underpinning of anything that I do. And I don't know if she passed it down through DNA or she taught it to me, but I do not understand how to navigate the world without love. It is a fundamental core part of who I am. I'm very compassionate. I'm very incredibly empathic. It is something that is just a part of who I am, and I can see that trait in my mother, so I know it definitely came from her, whereas the creativity came more from my father, although my mother is herself creative. It's just that my father's an artist and a videographer, and he has just done a ton of things where the expression of art came out of him. And growing up, I watched more TV than I could tell you. Honestly, I mean, I was Brady Bunchen and Gilligan's Island and Transformers and you name it. There was not a commercial I didn't know because I watched so much television growing up. And somehow I learned to play ball. I can throw a football. I could catch a baseball. I could hit. I ran track in high school and college. So I was this really strange kid. I had a computer when I was like 12 years old. This is in the late 80s. I was able to program on an Apple IIe and then on a Trash 80, TRS-80 for those who are really computer geeks and nerds. And I'm not a programmer. Trust me. My stuff was in BASIC, and it was basic in that. But what I did have was this insatiable curiosity, right? Insatiable curiosity. So growing up, I went from high school, I went to two different high schools, one in Seattle, one in Portland. I graduated from high school, and that insatiable curiosity came in handy because I eventually went to the Air Force Academy. And there, I got an education in my degree. If you looked at my degree today, Dr. Vibe, I'm telling you, this is funny, but you look at my degree today, it says Bachelor of Science. It doesn't have a major on it. And everyone asked me, how did you graduate without a major? Well, A, I slipped through the cracks, and B, I never wanted to be on top of the cracks. And so when I was a math major, and I still have a concentration in math, so I call myself a mathematician. But one of the things that did was it forced me to be multidisciplinary. So my insatiable curiosity, I actually fed it while I was at the Air Force Academy. Every one of us is an engineer. You can go to the Air Force Academy, you're an engineer. I don't care if you have an English degree, history degree, or a proper engineering degree, you're all engineers. All right, that's any military academy, whether it's West Point with the Army, Annapolis with the Navy, New London, Connecticut with the Coast Guard, or Kings Point, New York with the Merchant Marine Academy. We're all engineers. That's a core trait that they want in their officers out of the academy. So I had that covered. So then what, right? So my senior year, I had a chance to take history of sub-Saharan Africa, public speaking, creative writing, jazz appreciation, music appreciation. I took marriage and family therapy. Right? This is at the Air Force Academy. People look at my transcript. They're like, there's no way you went to the Air Force Academy and did all this. I said, yeah, because I had this insatiable curiosity. So when people say, what was my major? I say it was interdisciplinary analysis. Now, you take this kid who's the grandson of pioneers from Mississippi and Alabama, who went to Oregon, of all places. None of us know why Oregon, by the way. And then you have these two parents, one creative and the other compassionate, and you bring them together in me. My brother is far more creative than I am. He's runs his own business and has for about 30 years now. And then you formalize his education at the Air Force Academy, give him discipline, give him structure, give him a steady paycheck, and give him no reason to fail. And that was the beginning of my adult life.
Wow. That's
where all of this came from.
Two things I'm going to get into before we progress on, and we could just spend this whole conversation just talking about what you just shared. But two things I want to highlight and have you drill down a little bit. You said that your parents divorced at 2 years old, but you're very empathetic. Where does the world of empathy come in when it sounds like you had a childhood where you may not have been surrounded by love, or was there love outside of your parents when you were growing up?
Oh my gosh. I am the second youngest of two large sets of grandchildren, right? So my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, I had more love than you could ever imagine. No dysfunction in either family. Imagine my mother's parents started a business that runs today, almost 65 years later. That business is in business today. Dean's Beauty Salon and Barbershop in Portland, Oregon. In the same building my grandparents built themselves.
Wow.
Right? Drafted by my grandfather. They put it together, and it's all been here ever since for the last 65 years. My cousin, Kim Brown, she runs it today. So she's the third generation owner, operator of this neighborhood icon, right? So that was the hub of my childhood.
Okay.
Was the shop, right? That's what we called it. And we would get our hair cut, but all the cousins would be there all the time. My grandparents' house was the other hub. We'd all be there all the time. So I had love from all of that side of my family. And then on my father's side, I had the roughest Thanksgivings you could possibly imagine. I stuffed myself in one family's house, and then I'd have to go to the other house and stuff myself again. I just never lacked for that kind of love and attention. And they all knew I was special, weird, right? Because I was a big square, I admit that. And I was an encyclopedia. My head was always buried in books, and they fed me books. They would ask me questions. They would challenged me to learn more and understand the universe around me. They expected me to be smart. They never shunned me. Nobody ever said that I wasn't going to amount to anything. Nobody ever said that I was, a problem child. Nobody ever said that I couldn't be anything I wanted to be. I didn't have that. I had this incredible, now, don't get it twisted. I got made fun of by all my cousins because I was a big egghead, right? They made sure that I kept my ego in check. But the joyful part of my growing up was that I had two families that never ever stopped loving me. So my parents were divorced, and they loved me and my brother's older. He's 4 years older than I am. But in terms of just this big old family, I didn't have any problems growing up. I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed, man, to be honest with you, that I didn't have drug abuse, alcohol abuse, any kind of physical abuse, none of that stuff, man. I mean, my family, hardly anybody's even seen a jail. So I'm like, you are talking to a mutant when it comes to that.
Well, before we go any further, I have a pop quiz for you. Guess who's watching us live?
Oh, come on. In the U.S. or Canada? Let me ask you that.
Canada.
Oh, okay. Hell's bells. I don't know.
Oh, come on. You should be able. Oh, shoot. You should be able to tell us.
Okay, so I'm thinking that
you better get it right on the first answer. Or this person's going to be really upset.
Oh, then she must be Trini.
Yeah, I think she is.
Yeah, because Nicole's probably
there you go. There you go.
My grill.
There you go. Yes, a very special lady, Nicole Waldron, introduced me to this young gentleman, and she is watching live. So, Nicole, much blessings and favor to you and your son, and thank you for introducing me to this outstanding gentleman. So, Nicole, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And everyone, follow Nicole Waldron on Twitter. Pure Victory 7, insightful, passionate lady for social justice. I'll leave it at that. Oh
man, she's a dynamite, and I met her through somebody who's also watching, or better be, and that's Sherry, and she knows who she is. And between those two, I have been corralled in Toronto. They are so passionate about this community, and they're like, "Oh no, we're not letting you get away, sir. You're going to help us make this community something even more special than it is." And I, of course, when I got my arm twisted by those two ladies, good and well, I'm going to stick around.
Well, Nicole's enough for me. I don't need anything on top of that. I don't need two times. So you are a strong brother if you can handle both of them. So respect.
I don't know if I'm handling them or they're handling me.
No. I'm not getting involved in that conversation. I'll end the conversation if you think you're handling them, because I don't want to be in the middle of that. No. So let's get back to...
I'm not going to own that one, brother. Yeah. No, sir.
All right. So let's get back here. The other thing I want to get you to briefly share about, why did you get involved in the military?
Okay, so that's nobody in my family really was in the military. My father was in the reserves during the Vietnam War and Army Reserves, and then he was out after 2 years. He served his time and before he even got sent overseas, so he was very fortunate. So I didn't have a military background per se, but I was 13 years old, and I tell the story to students all the time. I was watching the Blue Bonnet Bowl in 1983. And I saw the Air Force Academy playing, and I said, I'm going there. Do not ask me why that popped into my head. And 4 years later, when I was a senior in high school, a few years after those days, I was about 1987, I got super serious about it, right? My grades were good enough that I probably could have gotten in, and then I got super serious about it, and I got through all the wickets to go. What was the difference? Well, there were two things, and I'll tell you. One, I've loved airplanes since day one. My mother worked for United when I was young, and I got a chance to fly a lot, and I caught the bug early. It might have been in my DNA before I was born. The second thing was that I loved the thought that I could serve my nation and get my education at the same time. So between my love of airplanes and my desire to serve, the Air Force Academy popped up on that Blue Bonnet Bowl, and it all just sort of converged. And so at that point, I was like, well, and then there's the fateful question my mother asked me in 1987, the trigger, if you will. It's a question that some parents ask their children, and I think all parents should ask their children. It's a question that I ask my children. How are you paying for college?
There you go.
And I was like, and she said, time out. I'm going to get you all the way to adulthood, and then you're responsible for your education. I will not take out a lot of money to help you. So you have to figure that out. Well, then the Air Force Academy, which was a dream in 1983, became a reality in 1987 when I ended up going to the Air Force Academy Preparatory School in 1988. And it was that question that catalyzed and crystallized my thought. Oh, since I'm responsible for my education, I ended up graduating from high school with 2 full scholarships, one to the Air Force Academy and one to the University of Texas.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. And so I tell students today, I had $350,000 in 1988 dollars, by the way, of scholarships upon graduating from high school.
Wow.
Right? And that was someone who had no money, right? So free money is available if you want it, right? And the Naval Academy wanted me to come out to them, and the West Point wanted me to come out to them. I just didn't have a desire to join the Navy or the Army. I was locked in on the Air Force because of airplanes.
Wow.
And when I talk to students, what I'm trying to always articulate is, if you don't have money, that's no excuse. Education comes in many forms, formal and informal. And if you want a formal education and you don't have the money, then you have to convince someone else that you are their investment. And I was able to convince 2 schools that I was worth the investment. So once students understand that, and they understand the power of being an alumnus from an institution, and here's what most students don't know, and this is an aside, but it's an important one. We have to create in the mind of our young listeners who are in high school now that their job is to be so lucrative that the schools come to them. I was a recruiter for the Air Force Academy and Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps. I know what to look for in a student. And one of the things is, when you are the caliber of student that gets my attention, other people are going to want you too. Now, what happens is they're competing for you to come to their school, not the other way around. You, as a student, especially if you're a woman or of color, you should never have to ask someone to go to their school.
Yeah,
you should be fending off offers because of how you have set yourself up. I taught this to my children. I teach it to anyone who's in middle school, and for kids who are in high school and they're young enough, I'll teach them too. For kids who've gone a little too far, I'll show them how they can still work that out. It just takes a little bit more time. But the part of this process that made me so excited was, when I got to the Air Force Academy, I knew where I belonged. I had a path to graduation, and I had no debt to worry about. I paid for my education in other ways, but I didn't have to think about those things. And now that I'm, 30 years removed from those days, I am so thankful for, to answer your question directly, the thing that I saw as a young man, which was to serve my nation, get my education, and begin my career from a position of knowledge and understanding, and not from a position of what do I do now that I have debt and a degree.
Okay. Well, folks, we'll get into the conversation topic, because we could go on just about Emille's journey before this topic tonight, but we'll get into it and other aspects and other conversations. Emille wanted to chat tonight about the self-directed life. Now, I'm going to ask you to define what the self-directed life is first, and then also say, why did you want to speak about it tonight? So go for it.
Okay, so the self-directed life is something that I coined for me when I went through some difficult times a few years ago. And what it was is, it's me deciding that the outcomes that I choose to create for myself are based on my desire for my best self to emerge. So some of us, we work on ourselves directly, and we try to develop ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing. I want people to read the books and go to the gym and begin to develop themselves in ways that make them feel stronger, smarter, more capable. But my understanding shifted a long time ago during those tough times. And I went from working on myself to creating an environment where my best self would emerge. And so the difference is that in the self-directed life, I'm continually evaluating my environment so that the environment is fertile enough for my best self to emerge holistically and organically. Which means that now I'm not directing me and saying, I have to do this, I have to do this. I'm always looking around. What's coming into my mind? What's coming into my eye, my ear? What's coming into my mouth? What's coming into my hands? Because if I control the environment, my best self will emerge naturally. Now I'm not directing the growth per se, because I can't control every single factor, and I can only take care of me. But what I can do is I can create this environment where my best self will naturally unfold. And now I'm not artificially trying to create something or artificially try to develop. It's all holistic, it's all organic, it's all natural to the thing that makes me who I am. And part of that came from the desire to be free. And freedom, I have three very basic definitions, and I'll go into that in a moment. But the self-directed life isn't about me saying, I am this or I do that. It is about understanding that I can manage the environment around me much more carefully than I can anything else. And if I manage the environment properly, what emerges is my best self. And out of that best self comes all of the things that would be greatness that as I would have defined it otherwise. So it's a little bit different, and it's a little challenging because it's indirect.
Before you go any further, what events or what things cause you to turn into that direction? Because you probably weren't always like that. So no, I always like to know what events, and many people, I ask this, one of the basic conversation pieces I ask when people come on, especially for the first time, when they've got into what they're doing, into their lane now. What made you turn?
Right now, I'm working with a really wonderful group of people on a podcast called Winging It, a podcast for people who don't have their shit together, excuse my language. Okay. But that podcast has, our guests are going to talk about the day of great despair. So I'm going to talk about that in my life, because the day of great despair is the day where you have to feel every bit of the pain of life. And you don't have there's no shortcut out of it. There's no stepping around it. There's no tiptoeing through it. You have to just be in that pain. So part of it was, there was a day, and I'm going to go very, very deep into the day of great despair. But it was a day during my first marriage when things were on the way to completely falling apart. And my first wife, she says to me something that hurt. And so I journaled the pain. And as I journaled the pain, I actually was celebrating the fact that I felt that pain so deeply. And so the day of great despair was in the midst of that pain, understanding that I had the capacity to feel it to that depth. And I said, why am I feeling this pain the way I'm feeling it? Well, of course, divorce is tough. I wish it on no one. But there's another aspect. I was actually sensitive to the capacity for that pain, which meant I was sensitive to the capacity for that joy. And if I can have that moment or that day of great despair, I can have a day of great exuberance, great joy. And that was the moment I said, I am no longer in charge of my life, in the sense that I didn't want the divorce, but it was going to happen anyway. So I can't say that I am now directing every event of my life to the success I say I want. But what I could say is, if I can feel this pain from this event and celebrate in the midst of that pain, the fact that I felt to that depth and had the capacity for that, then I can create my life in such a way that everything around me begins to feed me to become the best I can be. Just like the things around me fed me to have that moment of great despair.
Okay, excellent. So we've covered the definition. Why do you want to talk about self-directed life at this time? What are the influences, before we talk about influences of it, what is influencing you to talk about it at this time?
Okay, so one of my observations in America, and I speak about America because I don't know Canada as well as I wish I do, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be up here frequently, is I just need to know the people here and understand the community here, because it's so vibrant, so lively. and it's just a wellspring of joyful energy. But what I understand about Black America that comes out of my experience in it and my observations of it as I studied, I did a lot of self-study, is that we have been victimized by circumstance to the point where many of us don't understand how to come out of those circumstances. And we keep thinking that we have, like a lot of us, we feel like we're responsible for the pain that we feel, which we're not. We're responsible for the response to that pain. We're responsible for changing the circumstances within our control and recognizing the ones that are not. And because we have taken on so much guilt and shame and agony over the things that we cannot control, and we haven't claimed the responsibility for the power that we can control, we're stuck not understanding how to best change our future. And so one of the things that I did, and I'm going to plug it because I get to do that. I'm an author, and I wrote Start With a Sparkle, which is my reflection on how to develop oneself, how to create one's best life. But rather than telling you the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, I just go through the anecdotes of my past and use those as a mirror to help you understand your past. And more importantly, find ikigai, the thing that motivates you. It's a Japanese word that roughly translates to the reason why you get out of bed. In the self-directed life, if you have your ikigai, it will push you to change whatever is preventing you from expressing it. In the self-directed life, you begin to change the circumstances around you so that your ikigai is the only thing to focus on. And it's the only thing that you express. And if you don't know what your ikigai is, and what I'm doing with you is my ikigai. It's the reason why I woke up was to have this conversation with you today. And there will be another conversation I have tomorrow. And that conversation will be the reason why I woke up. And that conversation will change a life. And all I'm trying to do is change the world, one idea, one person at a time. My ikigai is to have conversations with people that allow them, and I was telling a protege I'm working with, we're catalysts, and my job is to catalyze your change from where you once were to where you want to be. I'm not going to give you the steps, because as a catalyst, my job isn't to tell you what to do, it's to show you it can be done, and then allow you to decide what elements of your own life need to change so that you can grow into that person you choose to be.
In what you've just shared with us, how important is reflection and getting into your inner core, looking at yourself?
I created, or like to say, I like innovated brazen creativity based on that very thought. In America, one of our biggest challenges is we don't slow down and think. It is definitely our undoing as a nation. And if we're not careful, thinking will become a commodity reserved only for the rich, instead of for every single person who has a mind. And the process of thinking, reflecting, going back over your day, your week, your year, it should allow you to begin to channel some of the things that you learned into some of the behaviors you'd like to pursue. But because we don't do enough of that, we find ourselves repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again, right? The definition of insanity, at least one of them, is repeating things without an expectation, with an expectation of something changing on the outcome. And as someone who grew up in Oregon, I know how to cut down a tree, and trust me, I understand that you have to swing the axe many times, and that's repetitive. And that one day you will fell the tree. The problem is some of us don't know if we're swinging at a tree or at a mountain. And so the expectation we have is that if we do the same thing over and over again, we'll knock down the tree, when in fact we're swinging at a mountain where we can swing for the next 10 lifetimes and we will not bring it down. And so reflection gives us the capacity to review, is my effort truly going to result in what I say I want? Or is my effort being wasted because I'm swinging at a mountain that I have no hope of bringing down? Reflection is the most powerful tool we have at our disposal, but it's become such a commodity because our lives are go, go, go. Our lives are such that we have to have microwave this and instant that. right? And we're not patient enough to read a book, so we want the movie. We're not patient enough to watch the movie, so we want someone to review the movie and tell us about it. We're not patient enough to read the review, so we put it in books on audio or books on tape, and we listen to it on our commute home. And then we don't spend enough time with our children, so we want someone to give them a grade in school so that we can figure out if they were good or bad or smart or dumb. And because we're not taking the time to reflect, and it should be a daily occurrence, it should be a weekly occurrence, it should be a monthly occurrence, and it should be a yearly occurrence, that we look back and we say, is my effort resulting in what I say I want? And if not, what should I change? And what I believe is that the environment that we're in determines whether or not we're actually going to do that reflection, which is why I focus on the environment versus myself particularly directly. Because in creating the environment for reflection, what will naturally occur?
Right. Excellent.
But if I don't create the environment, no matter how much, I'll put it on my list, just like I wrote a to-do list for this right here. I'm like working on a to-do list. And if I don't put it on this to-do list, it won't get done, because I'm so task-oriented. This is one of the problems in America, is we're so task-oriented sometimes. We forget that part of the joy of life is to just think and go,
stay still.
Just be still.
Yep.
And listen.
Yep. Yep. Staying still is part of the journey.
It really is.
Excellent. I'm going to ask you here, what are, with the many people you have mentored during your journey, what are some of the barriers that you see people encountering not being able to get to a self-directed life?
Probably one of the biggest things that I've seen is that people are not aware of their surroundings. They're not aware of the music they're listening to, the images they're putting in their eyes and brain. They're not aware of the food that they're eating. And so what happens is, because they lack that awareness, they would like to make a change without understanding that nothing changes without those basic things changing first. So if you're committed to change, you have to take a look at your environment and see it as it is. Is it healthy? Am I eating right and exercising properly? Like the fundamental things that we should be doing to allow ourselves the opportunity to grow into who we say we want to be. There's no shortcut to weight loss. There's no shortcut to fitness. You just have to do the work, right? You have to figure out, what is my body type? How should I be eating for this body? Should I go with a high protein diet or a low protein diet? High carbohydrate or low carbohydrate? Long distance training or interval training? Weight training, right? And that's just on the physical. And we have to spend time thinking about those things. Then we have to look at, what am I listening to? What music am I using to bring me down after the day, right? I listen to a lot of John Coltrane and Miles Davis. I love them. But I also listen to Kendrick Lamar. I also listen to some hip hop that nobody's ever heard of. And I listen to some stuff that's out there in space. And the reason why is because my playlist is very specific. If I'm thinking or writing, I want this music. If I'm ideating, I want this music. If I am in the midst, if I want to turn my brain completely off, I listen to different music or watch a show. And I watch eye candy. Don't get me wrong. I watch Big Brother and I watch Amazing Race and and then my standards on HDTV I'm going to watch all the time. But I'm careful about what I'm consuming through my eyes and my ears. I'm careful about what I consume in my mouth. And what we don't often give a lot of attention to are the sense of smell and the sense of touch. But those are also inputs. So imagine if you are not touching your children regularly, there's going to be a change, and that's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with as a parent, because touch does something for children that they need to happen. You don't have to hug them all the time or kiss them all the time, but a hand on the shoulder. And when I receive a hand on the shoulder, it affects me. It's an input for me to manage, right? So remember, the environment is where the self-directed life comes from. And then that last one, smell, the short circuits the brain and gets you to a point in memory faster than any other way. You want to get people to remember an event or a moment in their life, give them a smell. And we often overlook that as an important part of our environment, because smell can trigger you to the good or to the bad. And so the self-directed life is about controlling those inputs, because then the natural best part of you will emerge when you have set up the conditions for success. You want to cook a lobster, you can throw it on a fire or you can put it in boiling water. Boiling water is the environment.
As you've been sharing here, many thoughts have come to my mind, and one of them, and I hope I can mesh these two together. You're talking about the self-directed life, and I'm thinking about the aspect of work. And in different areas of our society, people don't want to work anymore. And do you understand how I'm meshing those two things together? That
Absolutely.
It's work to get to that self-directive life. And it just seems that and I think a lot of ways Canadian society in some ways is the same, that the aspect of work, people are pushing back when it comes to work, and it may direct them away from getting to that self-directed life. Would you agree with me?
I completely agree. I see it in America all the time. It's too easy to get comfortable. And I've heard this said by many civil rights leaders, and I understand it more as I age. Comfort is the enemy of progress. And so what is the fundamental premise of most businesses in America? To figure out how to make you more comfortable, to make your life easier, to save you labor, to speed some process that otherwise would take too long. And what I'm learning is that sometimes the long way is the best way. I don't want the pill. I want to feel blue for a little while. I need that. I need that humanity. And part of the journey is, well, I want what they have, whatever they is, whoever they is, right? What is it that they have that I want? The flat screen TV, the nice car, whatever, the bigger house, yada, 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 right? And one of the things that I think we have done a disservice to ourselves in America that we need to focus on is, what does good mean? What does success mean? By no means am I financially wealthy in the Bill Gates context, but I don't miss meals. And the work that I do satisfies my heart. So, and the more I grow my business, the more money I will make, but I'm not pursuing money for money's sake. I'm pursuing my business because I know I'm changing lives, and that's my goal. That's the reason why I woke up this morning. That's a slow process. It means that I'm going to take time to talk to people where they are in their journey. And I'm going to say to them, what is it about you that actually excites you? And when they tell me, I'm going to walk them through the process of making that their only motivator every day. And that is slow. And that's the problem, is that we don't respect the outcome of slow.
How big of an enemy is today's society in regards to one achieving their self-directive life? And the reason why I'm asking this is we allegedly, and I say the word allegedly, live in a democracy, which means the individual. But I don't see a lot of room for many individuals to be individual, which means it's even more difficult to achieve that self-directive life. Would you agree?
In America, one of the things I've observed is that we're struggling with that very topic. I think our democracy is in jeopardy, and I don't think it's in jeopardy from the Russians. I think it's in jeopardy from antipathy or apathy. I think we have allowed people to define the government in such a way that it's no longer something we can control, which I fear is the fastest way toward that apathetic answer. We have a problem with voter turnout in America. In some places it's less than 50% of the eligible voters. We know that Donald Trump was elected by people with fewer votes than Hillary Clinton had because of the way the Electoral College is working, which would not have been a problem if we had had a robust voter turnout, right? Not just as many as Barack Obama. I'm talking about a robust voter turnout like in states like Minnesota, where it's over 75% of the voters showing up to the polls. That should be the standard. That shouldn't be the anomaly in our country. So part of this apathy is what is causing us to feel like we have no control. Now, as a black man in America, I know I don't have a lot of political clout. I am not necessarily the most welcome person, but I do believe that my voice will be heard, and therefore I take time to vote. And that's just one thing I do. I take time to volunteer. I take time to teach. I take time to mentor, because I believe that every individual has the responsibility to become their best self, but they also need the assistance of those of us who are on that journey. And so part of what you're asking me, I'm going to answer this way. The environment or the society has created some obstacles and barriers to that kind of exercise of personal responsibility while expecting us to have it. So it's like there's this expectation, but not this empowerment. And I want those two to match. And that's one of the things that I'm doing by talking about the self-directed life, by asking people to do more reflection and to craft an environment that's healthy for their growth and success. Because your empowerment and your responsibility need to be commensurate, and they only will when you create both. I will accept the responsibility, and I will accept the importance of becoming empowered enough to achieve that which the responsibility says I can achieve. In America, we have a bit of a problem in that we won't necessarily create the environment for that empowerment, but then we have this expectation. So we often blame poor people for being poor. Oh, you are poor because you're lazy. Well, no. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My parents weren't rich by any stretch. My mother wasn't rich as a child of a single mom. So why am I doing what I do today? Because my mother made sure that whatever resources she had available to her, she used on my behalf. She tapped into those resources on my behalf. And I did the same with my children. I made sure that they went to the schools, and their mother made sure they went to the best schools that we could. I bought a house in a neighborhood that I probably shouldn't have to make sure that my kids went to the best schools in the neighborhood, because private school wasn't tax deductible, and a house was.
Excellent. And I just want to say there's some people watching live here. If you have any questions or comments, please type them in, because our time is fleeting fast, as I told Emille at the start of our conversation, but that's why we're going to have more and more epic conversations. When you reflect back on your self-directed life journey so far, what was the first important win that you had when you started to do the self-directed life journey?
Oh man, that's a good question. What was the first win? I retired from the military in 2012. My official retirement date is December of 2012. But prior to that, my last day at work was September 7th of 2012. My birthday is on September 9th, so it was kind of a great birthday present that I had a little over 2 months of, I was still getting paid because I had leave built up that I was taking prior to my official retirement date. October of 2012. I will never forget that month. I promised myself when I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1993 that I would do this, and it took me 20 years to actually achieve it. I spent an entire month wherever the wind took me, I went. I started at Andrews Air Force Base, and I got on the first airplane smoking, literally. And I ended up at McCord Air Force Base right outside of Seattle, Washington. And from there, I had the adventure of a lifetime. I went to Hawaii. I went to California. I went to Japan. I went to Singapore. I went to Spain. I went to Germany. I went to France. And I went to Kazakhstan by way of Turkey in 30 days.
Amazing.
That was my win. My first real win was doing that.
Excellent. Well, as we wind down our conversation, let me get from you, what are some of the wins that people will get if they start doing a self-directed life?
The first win that I think they're going to see is, remember, it's all about the environment. They're going to start to see that when they make a decision that they want to have a life that is for them a purpose. Why I can't tell you what a life of purpose means. I can tell you that if you pursue your ikigai, you will figure out sooner or later that this is the thing that I want to wait. Some people don't want to face it because it's not a moneymaker, right? And one of the things I write about in my book and I talk about in my course, Awaken, Embrace, and Creativity, is don't worry about the money. Because if you're trying to, if you worry about the money, you'll be distracted. Create the environment where what you say you want is likely to emerge out of you. And that first win, that first thing you'll see is that your mind doesn't work as hard for you to calm down because you're already in the environment that you created. So you're listening to the right things in the car. You're come home, you're watching the right things on television. You're eating the right foods because you understand how to take care of your body and you're willing to make the changes. And they don't have to be major changes, right? If you listen to the news just before you go into work, I challenge you to cut your commute time in half, listen to the news for the first half of the commute, and then in the second half of the commute, listen to something that is completely to your liking. That's not the news. And see how your attitude changes when you get into the office, right? You come into the office after listening to a half hour or an hour of news, you're listening to CBC or whatever, and you don't come into the office ready to be happy and joyful and helpful because the news was not happy, joyful, and helpful. Get your fix, but then put on something else, and immediately you'll see a change in how you interact with your coworkers and the people with whom you must work if you are in a service industry. That's just one. When you come home, do the same thing on the flip. Don't come into the house, especially if you have a family, especially if you have children. Don't come into the house after listening to 45 straight minutes of the news. Take some time and listen to something that is pleasing to your ear or that builds you up. And come home, walk in the door excited about something that you've always wanted to know about rockets. And so the SpaceX launch of the Falcon Heavy was amazing to you. And man put a car in the sun orbit. Like that, like coming home and sharing that. I just listened to this podcast today that was all about the finances of this or the understanding that. I mean, one of my favorite podcasts taught me about the Great Dismal Swamp. And I came home and I'm excited and I'm telling this to people that I love, and they're looking at me like, why are you talking about a swamp? But what I'm not doing is I'm not talking about something that drags me down. So these wins are subtle, but they're very important because those shifts begin to build on one another once you see the effect of them. And then you start eating slightly differently. I'm not asking you to stop eating pizza and burgers and all the things that you feel are joyful. I certainly indulge, but is there a way you can add more kale or add a smoothie or juice, make your own juices or add fruit? I don't care if you have to drizzle some cheese on that broccoli. Change how you eat and see how does your body react to a change in diet? Just a slight one. Because success builds on itself. And so those little wins become bigger wins and bigger wins. And pretty soon, without you having to try to change yourself, you've changed your environment and your best self begins to emerge. And that becomes a success. And ooh, I like what I see. I don't want to ruin what I've been eating by not working out. So I'm going to work out more. I don't want to eat that food that I used to eat or drink those things that I used to drink because I would just negate all of the work I did last week. I burned 3,000 extra calories last week by taking a 2-mile walk. I'm chasing the moon in ways that I never chased it before because I didn't know I loved astronomy the way I do. Right? Like all these things kind of come out when you begin to just imagine yourself pursuing that ikigai, either formally or informally. You know, it's not always about the dollar bill. Sometimes art for art's sake, joy for joy's sake, right? Love for love's sake. Sometimes you just have to live and then the money will come later. And it's okay if you're not going to make a lot of money doing the thing that you're passionate about. It's okay. Because maybe the reason why you're passionate is to spark someone else.
Yep. Excellent. Well, we are going to leave on that final note, that conversation piece. Emille, I would like to say thank you so much for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule because I know you're traveling back out of the country, out of Toronto in the next day or so. But we just like to say thank you very much for taking the time to share with us tonight. If people want to find out more about you, where can they go?
You can go to my website, Emille Bryant Presents. It's my name, presents.com. So it's Emille, Emille, Bryant, presents.com. You can just Google my name, Emille Bryant, and you'll go to emillebryant.com, which will take you to my website. Or you can go to my book, startwithasparkle.com. All will end up on my website. Or you can go to brazencreativity.com. So I have lots of web addresses. They all lead to my website. So my name.com, my book.com, my course.com. It all bring you there, and they can learn about me. They can read my bio and find out about me. And actually, on my website, schedule time with me, and I'll give you a call.
And it's fantastic. And the contact information will be part of the post for the replay of this epic conversation. Have a great comment here from a very kind and longtime supporter of the Dr. Vibe Show, David Hughes from Australia.
Wow.
He's saying, I was in Adelaide on the weekend giving a presentation on coaching. What your guest is speaking about is part of my presentation, self-awareness and responsibility.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that all the way from Australia. That's fantastic. Yes. And if you invite me to come, I'm there. So just let me know.
Well, David is a certified Toastmaster, a great presenter. Actually, he was in Vancouver, I believe either early this year or last year. The Toastmaster World Championships were in Vancouver this year. I know that he was part of it, but David, highly respect you as always. I hope you and your son are doing fine. And David, we got to get you back on the show. You haven't been on since Blab days, and that's going way back, David. So much thanks. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Oh, look at this. David has just responded. Leave it with me, Emille. So there you go. There you go. Okay, David, so you're going to invite him before me? I don't care. I don't mind. Doesn't matter. I don't mind. I don't mind at all. That's all good. I'm Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. If you want to listen or watch replays of any of my Epic Conversations on YouTube, you're at the place. If you want to listen to replays of my audio Epic Conversations, you can go to the website, thedrvibeshow.com. You can also go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio. You can also listen to selected audio replays at thegoodmenproject.com, one of the most viewed sites in the world for men, where they get 3 million unique visitors a month. I've been a regular contributor for almost 5 years now. Or you can also go to WJMS Radio out of New York City. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. So if you'd like a complimentary session, please touch base with me via Twitter at drvibeshow, email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com, or you can also go to my website, go to the top, click on Contact Dr. Vibe by mail, audio, or voice message, and it's when I say mail, it's email, not snail mail, all right? Just want to make that clear. Also, I am a brand ambassador for the only online site dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. That's Cuisine Noir Magazine. Their website address is cuisinenoirmag.com. Also, you can catch me Friday mornings live at 7:25 Eastern Time on WURD Radio out of Philadelphia. Word Radio is the only Black-owned public radio station in all of Pennsylvania. It's all talk format, and I'm on there Friday morning, 7:25 Eastern Time in the morning, on one of the panelists of a segment called The Week That Was, where we look at stories that got a lot of publicity and some that should have got more publicity, and that's hosted by Christopher Flood the Drummer Norris and Iki Raw. That's his name, Iki Raw. That's what he calls himself. So, as always, I'd like to end off with 3 things this year. Oh, look at this. Oh, sorry, Emille. He says he wants to have me first now, but he said the two of you in Australia would be enormous. Well, I'm open to the invitation, but hey, if I'm more than happy if Emille wants to go first, I'm good with that. But David, we will
Go
touch
together. I
base.
don't care. That's fine.
No problem. I would love to share with your audience down in Australia, but I will send you, David, a video message by tomorrow just to catch up. 3 last things. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. Thanks very much for watching live on the replay. Thanks to David in Australia. Thanks to Nicole. And who was the other lady, Emille?
Sherry.
And Sherry. Thank you so much for making another epic conversation. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. And David says thank you. So what more do we need other than that to say bye-bye?